Hello, we are here for one more lesson of this AxisVM training course, and the topic for today will be again the icon toolbar. Previous video was part 1. Now we are going to see some additional commands and functionalities, so today it is part 2. To remember this icon toolbar, it is by default this toolbar that is on the left side of our working area. And we've ended in the previous lesson in this icon here that was for transformations. So restarting today with the following one, this icon here, that it is for work plans. I would say that the majority of these functions in different ways has the purpose to make easy life in terms of working space inside AxisVM. So work plans is also a function that has that goal because allow the user to create different work plans, and with those different work plans besides the standard ones, we can create geometry in different conditions. So clicking on the function, we have this dialog box where we can create several types of work plans. The first thing to notice it is that we have 3 possibilities that are basically similar. So global work plans, XY, XZ, YZ, and these 3 are parallel with the global coordinate plans, and we can define an additional information to make it parallel. So for example, global XY, we got this box to insert a name, which I will leave as the standard one, okay? And we have three basic things. One, it is a possibility to give a definition, in this particular case, of Z. I will say, for example, 5. We can pick up, and then we go to the drawing area and pick some points. And we can have these display options choice regarding global or local, which is related with the idea of having the coordinates related to the global one or just local. Saying OK, we see the plan as it was created. I will rotate a little our view, and you can see that I have a plan with this grid and the lines somewhere in the middle of my model. Okay, this is the work plan I've just created. I'm going to this area here, which we are going to see in one of the next lessons, and activate the global. And now I have again the standard one. Still in work plans, okay, these are the same. We have another option called general, and general work plans are defined by an origin and 2 vectors to define the directions x and y. So general, again, a box for the name, and I will say, for example, origin here, direction x this point, and y, for example, on that point. Some values which I will leave, and OK, and rotate this again to see that I have a little strange work plan. I will repeat this procedure to activate the normal one, and this was the idea of having a general work plan. I still have one more function there called smart, and basically smart work plans follow the local system of one element, which can be a truss, beam, a rib, or a domain. The origin is the first point of that element, and the X and Y axis are parallel to the local X and Y axis of the system. So smart, let us choose, for example, this element, say OK, and you see the origin, it is here. I will rotate this a little, and as you can see, I have through the orientation of the element. So these are basically the work plans, which are very convenient to work with. Following, I have another function called structural grid, and we have two options. This is a custom, the second option is a custom grid, which is interesting, but I will show you the standard functions. So structural grids, I don't have any. I will add one. I have also possibilities to work with these structural grids. I can follow work plans standard, okay, and I can follow also having work plans that I have already done with a previous command. So I will use, for example, this work plan 2, which was a little stranger. A couple of options, for example, to display the grid only if the work plan is active. I will not activate this one. A field for the name, standard one, I will leave it. Color. These labels for the grids only on the start side, only on the end side, or in both sides. I will choose this one. A distance for having these labels, which I will leave also by default. Origins and rotation angles. So I can say, for example, 30 degrees here. Or I can pick the origin. I will leave, if I go and pick the origin, I'll go to the drawing area and pick a point somewhere. Automatic dimensioning, I will activate this also. And I can have a definition for spacing, for example, 5 times not this symbol, so 5 times 3, and on the other one 5. I can have some prefix, some labels, starting values, direction to show. I think it's okay to show you. And I have this kind of grid. Okay, you see the dimensions, you see the labels from one side and the other side, and that's it. We can create as many as we want. We can turn it on or off. We can, in any moment, to click it and open it again and change whatever we want. So, for example, this is easy one. On other color, so a lot of things. The custom plans add some possibilities to create our own grid. For at this moment, I think it is interesting to explore the possibilities on the standard function, so I will leave this out, as the main concepts are in these standard functionalities. Now I have some, first I will turn this off to clean a little the screen. Then I have something called guidelines. These guidelines are, I will call them construction lines to help on the addition of the geometry of the model. These are pretty much standard stuff, so I can have a vertical guideline. You see that I have a line in my cursor. If I click a point, it will add a line somewhere in my screen. The same for the other functions. So horizontal, I can do the same. Cross one, and it will have two lines. An oblique, clicking a point and then a second one to define the orientation. And finally, a cross one, a double one, oblique. So clicking a point and then a second one to define the second orientation. And I have guidelines, you see, somewhere, and they follow the points I click in space. So I think it's also interesting to use these functions as helpers on the process of working with the system. Then I have some tools called geometry tools. These geometry tools are also helpers to creation process and edition process. They have different functions. If we go through them, we can apply a perpendicular constraint, a parallel one, a perpendicular to a plane, a midpoint, a bisector, and we have a couple of functions. So you can explore these easy. I will not show all the functions to avoid making this video so long. I think it's quite easy to discover and to explore. Let us try to make one or two. I can start with the creation of geometry, so a line. If I go now in my options, I have them already on and not grayed out. For example, a perpendicular constraint. I can create a line, but I need to make some selections. So a line, and I will select a second point, and now my starting point, you see, that is perpendicular to the definition I've done in the two first points. And I can have a final point. So I can create points and conditions through these selections with a geometry. I can try to have another one, for example, this bisector. I can try to, okay, first side, second side, and now starting point. I will use this one again, and line and point somewhere, which created a point which I was not able to see, maybe my mistake, but okay. These are conditions to create some helpers of the geometry. Finally, I have a function that is called dimension line symbols and labels, and this group of functions let you assign dimensions, information boxes to the geometry, and this is associative information that you add to your drawing. Let's try to explore some. So when I click the function, I get this dialog box. I have options around, but I think most of them are graphical things. So first one, orthogonal dimension. I can click, for example, 2 points, and I can add a dimension. Second one, it is an aligned dimension. Let's try to create something like this. You see that I have options here in each of the commands I go through. So I can choose different things. I'm applying basically the standard stuff. I have an angle dimension, for example, I can choose these elements and I can apply this kind of dimensioning. I can apply arc length dimension. I don't have arcs here, so it will be a bit of a challenge to apply an arc. Let's try to, for example, to choose 3 points. I'm not sure what I will get. Okay, and the big one. So let us try to apply it on the other direction. Okay, still not so good. Okay, but it applies that dimension of the arc. A radius. So again, let's try to choose these same 3 points. I hope now I don't have the arc, but I can, for example, create. I can try to create an arc. Let's try to have this kind of entity. Let's see if it created something. No, it did not create anything that I would like to have. Okay, but you can have the idea. I have elevation marks, which is very interesting because it can add this type of information to points related to the global coordinate system. Be aware that we have these boxes and we can have, for example, I can add something. Okay, and what I write on the box, it will be transferred to the mark I'm adding in my drawing. I can add a text box. Okay, again, I can have something like this and add it. I can have an object info text box, so I can pick an object and you see I get the length of my object. I can have a result text box. I don't have anything calculated here, but if I click in one of the elements, okay, I can have the information I have now. But if I have results, I will get those results in here for the element and the point I pick. And finally, I have isoline label. If I have results also, and I think this model, let me see, no, I think I don't have anything. No, I don't have. I would like to have, but I don't have anything calculated in this particular model. So I have this isoline label, so I can click in one of the points, not the case in this particular one, to have the information about the point of the isoline that I pick. We have also some configurations we can do for the dimension and for the text parameters. Okay, these are pretty much standard stuff. So you see, this is the type of mark we have on the dimensions, definitions for sizes, types of lines. Okay, we can have this. Thickness of the lines, if we have extension lines or not, color for them, also styles for the extension lines and thickness for these ones, labels, orientations, inside, outside, okay, all of this stuff. In terms of the text, basically similar stuff. So prefix, we can do whatever we want. We can have something like this, standard or not. Suffix, the same. Measured value, display units or not. So like this. We can define units and go to these settings of the Unix and the formats, and we can define also the fonts, the styles which are being applied on the text that is inserted with the dimensions. So For this part 2 of the functions, I think it is pretty much this. We will continue in the next videos to show more functions. Again, I think these type of lessons you can learn a little more in our theoretical informations we have inside our platform. Anyway, for any questions, anything not so clear, because it's also difficult to cover absolutely everything in a couple of minutes, please contact us. We will give you all the necessary support about this or other things that you may need.